Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, please make your way inside. We're going to go ahead and get started promptly. We don't want to run into Maghrib with Sayyid's talk, inshallah. Inshallah, welcome this evening to Dua Kamel program. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all of our mourning for Imam al-Hussein during this holy month. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your a'mal and allow you to give you the opportunity to continue to reflect and benefit from the remembrance of the tragedy of Karbala during these holy nights. Please join me in welcoming dear Sayyid Abbas Razavian to give us a wonderful reminder on these holy nights with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah. May your mourning, crying for Imam Hussein alayhi salam be accepted. When we enter the month of Muharram and the month of Safar, each month has its own characteristic. The characteristic of Shahr Muharram is crying and mourning for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And this is a great act of worship itself. When you look at some of the traditions, for example, Nafasul Mahmum Lidhulmina from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. This is one of the traditions that the Imam says you should write in gold. What is this tradition? A tradition about mourning for Ahlul Bayt. Nafasul Mahmum Lidhulmina Tasbih. A sad sigh for us Ahlul Bayt is glorification of Allah. I want for you to think so far in Muharram, how many times were you sad and you exhaled for Imam Hussein, you had a sad sigh. Such a simple act is equal to glorification of Allah. وَهَمَّهُ لَنَا عِبَادَةً. And grief for Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, for us, is equal to worship. So just like in the month of Ramadan, when your breath is equal to worship, أَنفَاسَكُمْ فِيهِ تَسْبِيحٌ. In the month of Muharram, Safar, our breath is also equal to glorification of God. But the difference is that here it is a sad sigh. And some might ask this question as to why is it that remembering Imam Hussein is equal to say Allahu Akbar. Tasbih means say Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. Why is it equal to that? Why is it equal to the remembrance of Islam, remembrance of Allah? Because Imam Hussein alayhi salam, as Shaheed Sadr said, is all of Islam. Huwa kal kull. Imam Hussein is Islam. So therefore, when you cry for Imam Hussein, you are crying for Islam. Because all of the components and beliefs and practices of Islam were incorporated inside Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So therefore, when you're sad for him, you're sad for Allah's religion. And in a way, you are glorifying God. We remember Imam Hussein alayhi salam because of the Quran. We have many different reasons why we remember him. Quran says, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. That I do not ask any reward for it except the love, attachment to my family members. When you look throughout the Quran, the prophets mention that there is no reward for or compensation for my prophethood or for my risala, for my mission. I don't want anything. And naturally, this is for us a sign of sincerity because the prophets are saying, we're not after your money. We're not after anything else. We are sincere. We don't want any reward in this message. But only one prophet asked for a reward for their mission and was told to ask for a mission. And that is our prophet. And his reward is love, as Quran says, La as'alukum alayhi ajr. Say, there is no reward. I don't want any reward for my mission, all my hard work. I don't want any reward. Illa, but here, our prophet deserves a reward, and Allah wants this reward, illa al-mawaddata fil qurba, except the love of my relatives. That is why, remembrance and mourning for Imam Hussein alayhi salam is not only exclusive for the Shia. Some of the Sunnis, they remember Imam Hussein because of this verse of the Quran. They say, I want to compensate Rasulullah for his mission. And the Quran says to compensate with the love of his family. So therefore, remembering Imam Hussein is glorification of Allah. Being sad for Ahlul Bayt is equal to glorification of God. And loving Ahlul Bayt, attaching to them in any way or form, is giving the reward and compensation to Rasulullah for his mission. I have provided a list of a topic for this Muharram and Safar, these Thursday nights that inshallah I'll be at your service. And the topic is about hope and being hopeful. And this is a series of talks that I'll be having hopefully Thursday nights, and it is a topic that is very well needed in today's society where many sicknesses, psychological sicknesses, come from despair, come from not having enough hope. And many times we view that we are not truly hopeful. The believer should have a sense of hope and enjoy his life and be so hopeful in the hereafter that it's completely different, the way he lives, completely different than a non-Muslim. And when you look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam and you see the tragedy of Karbala, you see that all the factors of despair were there. And one of the great lessons from the many lessons of Karbala, maybe 100 solid lessons there are in Karbala, for young, for old, for women, female, all ages. One of them is how to remain hopeful when all the odds are against you. I'm sure in your own lives there were time periods where you were upset and maybe you lost hope. Either something happened in your life that you didn't know the explanation for. Or maybe it was an examination, a test, and you feel that you failed. And there must have been a time in all of our lives that we were down. But the believer should never be down. Because we learned from our master, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that on the day of Ashura, all the factors were against Imam Hussein. But yet he was the most hopeful. Water was cut off to him. His family members were present in the battle. All these are factors that would maybe a normal person would say, that's too much for me. I cannot bear. Let's go back. Even the family members of Imam Hussein, you don't see once them say, let's go back. This is too much. We have too many kids. there's water, there's tremendously outnumbered, was Imam Hussein. The common numbers they give is 72 versus 30,000. Who remains hopeful with such odds, with such numbers? So one of the great lessons we have is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam teaches us to be hopeful even when everything is against us. You see, for example, that he has this dua in the beginning, in the morning of Ashura. Allahumma anta thiqati fi kulli karban wa raja'i fi kulli shidda. My Lord, you are my support in every difficulty and my hope in every severity. So when we talk about hope, we understand that hope is the engine for us. And if it was not for hope, we wouldn't move anymore. We look at a time period, when you look at today, the deaths of despair. What are the deaths of despair? From suicide to alcohol deaths to drug-related deaths. These are deaths of despair. Some of them have increased in the last 20 years 2 or 3 times. In modern time, in where we live, mankind is hopeless. And if we want to share the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam to our community, we can teach them about hope. Just how Quran talks about hope. What does the Quran say about hope? Actually, one of the key factors in the Holy Quran, the key themes is always hope. And we'll talk about these, inshallah, these following weekly gatherings that we have. One of the verses in the Quran that talks about hope, and I'm sure you've heard of many of these. Inna hadha al-Quran yahdi allati hiya aqwam. Indeed, Quran guides to which is most suitable and gives good tidings to the believers who yubashshir al-mu'mineen alladhina ya'maluna as-salihat anna lahum ajran kabira. That those believers who do righteous deeds, that they will have a great reward. Quran is saying, if you do good, have hope in a good reward. So one of the ways that Quran heals us and heals the different sicknesses that man can have is by giving hope to man and saying, if you are good, don't worry about necessarily maybe you will see it in this world, but if you do not see it in this world, for sure you will see it how you should truly see it in the hereafter. You'll be completely rewarded in the hereafter. And that is one of the reasons, it's not the only reason that motivates us, but when you keep doing good actions, good deeds, is for hope. You have hope that Allah will reward you. You have hope of heaven. Hope that one time you will have the meeting of God, liqa'ullah, meeting of Allah. Hope that one day you would leave this temporary world, this world that is full of bala, of calamity. So therefore, the believer lives his life in a way, not that this dunya is bad. Actually, if you have true hope, this world becomes enjoyable for you as well. But you have hope in the reward of God, hope that everything you've worked for one day, you will see it. It won't go wasted. Even Adam's weight of it won't go wasted. So hope is one of the key components of the teachings of the Quran and being hopeful. And also hope is one of the key components in Ashura. From the almost 100 lessons we have in Ashura, hope is one of them. Tonight I'm going to be talking about separating ourselves from despair. Factors of despair. 5 factors of despair. Because you have to rid yourselves of the factors. All the factors were prevalent in, say, for example, Ashura. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he did not do these factors. He did not allow these factors to affect him. The first factor, and these are hopefully relative to our personal lives, is the first factor that causes despair and ruins our hope. One is sin. If a person sins, they feel immediately there's a call from Satan, from Shaitan, that look, you're not good enough. Immediately, if God forbid someone sins or has bad habits, continues to sin, you see that Shaitan say, no, don't go to the center anymore. Don't see the brothers anymore. You're not worthy. They're all clean. They're pure. You want to go there? That's for the good. You're not deserving of this. And this is something very dangerous. And, one of the great ways that Allah has, taken us away from this type of despair from sin is how easily He forgives. It's His forgiveness. How easily He can forgive someone. And you see all throughout the Quran encouraging us that if you sin, it will be completely wiped out. As we read in the traditions in Shahr Ramadan before, that in the Day of Judgment, you won't even see that action anymore. Imagine a world where all our actions would be always recorded and you could not do anything about it. You could not even seek for forgiveness. But you see that Allah has allowed for forgiveness, even in the worst of sins. And you see the example, for example, of Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, a Yazidi general, someone that had so much trust with Ibn Ziyad that they command him to stop Hussein ibn Ali. Obviously, they're not going to send someone that they think is easily going to be, changing sides. They're going to send someone who has history with their army, somebody that has done different things, somebody who can command, hundreds, if not 1,000 people in their army. They send him to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and you don't see that inside Hur's mind that it is, look, I'm Yazidi, I'm a military man for Yazid, I have committed so many sins and probably atrocities. But you see, he had hope. And because of that hope that he had, he becomes Husseini. He changes sides. So the first is sin. The Quran mentions very beautifully, and always remember this verse in Surah Al-Zumar 53. قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Now this is one of the verses that Allah is speaking to the sinners. O you servants of mine who have transgressed against your own self. So Allah in this verse very beautifully says, Ya ibadiya, you are my servants. The sinners. He's talking about the sinners, that you are still my servants. He's not God of only those that worship Allah and don't do any sins. Here in this verse says, you are my servants who have transgressed upon themselves, not upon me. You have harmed yourself, because nothing happens to God if you transgress upon Him. La taqnatu min rahmatillah. Do not despair. Don't despair of God's mercy ever. O sinner, don't ever have despair. So the first thing that happens is that, God forbid, if someone sins, one of the factors, and they continue this, they believe that there's no way out anymore and they have to continue this path because they believe that, God forbid, God will never forgive them. So therefore, it might be an avalanche of small sin to large sin, to not to pray anymore, not to fast anymore. But remember, and we spread this message that no matter what happens, La taqnatu min rahmatillah, inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a. God forgives all sins. Every sin God will forgive. The second factor of despair, so the first is sin. And the farther we are away from sin, the more hopeful we will be. And if, God forbid, there is a sin, we can immediately seek forgiveness or even repent, and that will be hasana for us. That will be recorded as good. The second factor of despair is failure. And this might have happened to us. And it probably, everyone's life is full of failure. Have there ever been an exam where we failed or we had a score we didn't like and you got upset? Maybe some when it comes to marriage, They don't find the right suit, the right person, and there is, for example, divorce. Maybe in economics or our financial lives, we tried to start a business and we failed and we lost all our money. So failure is another component of despair. There's this person by the name of Abu Tayyar. In the hadith, it says he comes to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Abu Tayyar was a businessman, and he had lost all his business. When he lost all of his money, when he loses all of his money, he is afraid to open up the store again. I've seen, sometimes traders, large businessmen, when prices go up, down, one of them was telling me, I'm afraid of this commodity like I'm afraid of a snake. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I lost so much money. So he comes to the Imam, he lost everything. And we said that one of the factors of despair is failure. So the Imam talks to him and mentions and asks him, do you still have your store? And yes, I have my store. He gives him pieces of advice. He says to make, say, 2 units of prayer, 4 units of prayer, and repeat this dua, a supplication, which in it is a lot of ubudiyyat, being a slave of God. Tawajjahtu bila hawlin minni wala quwwatin walakin bihawlik wa quwwatik. I pay attention that I don't have any power by myself, and that all power is to God. Allahumma farzuqni min fadlika al-wasi'. Give me rizq from your extensive amount of rizq. Kathiran tayyiban. So he says a specific dua, and the Imam encourages him to open the store again. He opens, and slowly and with different ways, with rent, with different things that he does, he begins to become so successful in his business life that he actually gets enough money to build different homes, multiple homes for himself. Someone who was completely bankrupt, with encouragement of the Imam to be hopeful, to make this dua, to do it, properly, and again he tried again. So you see, dear brother and dear sister, in failure there's a lot to learn. And failure happens in all of us, especially those that are younger. But what is important is that skill of learning from your mistake and realizing what you did wrong, and then from then on, not repeating it. There's an interesting story, and this is from Sheikh Ja'far Subhani, brings in one of his books, about one of the most, probably powerful Persian emperors, kings. Maybe of the top 5, if you were to analyze to see who are the top 5, most powerful Persian kings, one of them is Nadir Shah. Nadir Shah, he was at war with, Nadir Shah Afshar. He was at war with the Ottomans, with the Turks. And he takes over Samarra and other parts of Iraq. There's always, a contest of Iraq is between Persia and between the Ottoman Empire. And he surrounds and besieges Baghdad. But in this battle, because he gets shot, his horse falls on the ground, and it gets full of blood. And they think that the king is done, or the general is dead. So they begin to run away, because even though he was alive, his horse was shot, was in the blood. They had such a terrible defeat. Again, Sheikh Ja'far Subhani says this story. Don't say I'm claiming, talking good about the Shahs of Iran. This is in Sheikh Ja'far Subhani's book. And his army comes back. They say some of them didn't even have shoes. They gave all their military equipment, everything they had, they left it behind, and they ran away. So imagine, you're a general, and you have such a defeat, and it was humiliating. Maybe you would not attack anymore. You would be on the defensive. But he learned from his mistake. Just we said that you have to learn from your mistakes. And he gathered more troops and more troops and more troops. He thought of different ways to attack. They say he gathered an army of 200,000 and then again went back and then conquered Baghdad. And then had a treaty that the Ottomans or the Turks would give back the Persians their land that was taken from them. So you see, this is an example that throughout history, if you look at inventors, businessmen, married couples sometimes, and when you look at them, you see that if there is failure, it doesn't mean necessarily you should quit. Think about it, learn from your mistake, and try again. So the second factor of despair is what? Failure. So we have to be able to have the skill of learning how to cope with failure and to learn from it. The third thing, because Adhan time is coming, we have about 12 more minutes of speaking. So the third thing that we can say causes despair and causes sadness in our communities is comparison. Comparing ourselves to one another, comparing our kids, our families, our jobs, our income. You know, I work hard, for example, from day and night. I have overtime. But I have never even left, for example, the state. I've never gone on a vacation. I am struggling. I still don't own a home. But when I get invited, others, they own homes. They have very nice homes. You know, the car I drive breaks down all the time. But, you know, this other brother or sister, they always, mashallah, have the newest car available. Or when it can, for example, when it comes to in social media. You know, I have 2 followers in social media, for example, myself. And the other sheikh has 10,000, 100,000. And every day, if I gain 5 followers, I lose 6. They start unfollowing me. I compare myself to them. And I get sad every time I look at social media. I see how many followers they have, what food they're eating, where they're traveling, where they're going, how much income they have. It makes me feel bad. Or I compare my kids to their kids, for example. They're all straight A students. Mine, they really don't like to study. The third factor is that we have to stop comparison. We have to stop comparing ourselves to one another. Because everyone's life is different. Allah gives rizq to whoever He wants. As our teachers of akhlaq say, when God provides you with a material possession, in reality, who is the owner of that? Who is the owner? Allah. Inna lillah. Allah, we belong all to Allah. It's how the students in the Hawza used to write their names in the books, but they would say, what can I say? That God owns everything. Even this book, God owns it. He has allowed me to be, you know, in this world, the owner, to have ownership of it. But the real al-Malik, al-Haqiqi, the true owner of everything, even our own kids, is God. So everything we have, homes, cars, whatever we have, this is nothing separate than something to test us with. When you look at a Scantron exam, for example, those that are, you know, students with a number 2 pencil, it's just, you don't feel any attachment to the Scantron exam because it's just something to provide you so you could write and be examined with. The same with the homes, the cars, the women, children, all of these different things. Allah gives these to test us. One time, for some, it will be the test of poverty. Some will be the test of being rich and wealthy. But regardless, all of these belongs to Allah, and they are only instruments or tools for us to be tested by. The fourth, because we're running out of time, is not reaching our goals. Sometimes we set difficult goals for ourselves, and they're not realistic. And because we have unattainable goals and we fail, we say, oh, now I get despair, now I become sad. But if I were to put realistic goals for myself when it comes to studying, learning, worship, even health, I put realistic goals for myself. when I achieve these, I go to the next step. Then I achieve this, I go to the next step. I don't make a huge, for example, if I want to lose weight, I'm not going to go from, say, 250 pounds to, say, 150 pounds. I don't make such a, I go slowly, say 250 pounds, 249 pounds, for example, myself. 240, slowly, 230. So having realistic goals, this will help you. And if you sometimes you're very enthusiastic, you hear a speech or something, you're motivated, you say, I'm going to do this from now on, and it's too difficult, you won't reach it. The last thing, and we have now 7 minutes. When I was in Iran in the summer, it was very interesting. This year, the speakers, some of them, they would give the minutes. I'm going to only talk for 10 minutes or 5. They give the minutes before, between Maghrib, Isha, or prayers or whatever, so people would stay. So now I learned from there's 7 minutes left before prayer time. The last thing that, there's multiple things we can do to that causes despair for us to have hope. But, these are a few of them. The last is that having a mechanical life, a material-only life, and not focusing on the spiritual. You've probably seen people in California that have it all. And they own everything. Yet they say, I'm not happy. They hate their lives. Everything becomes boring for them. They don't know what to do anymore. If you live a life that is only a mechanical life, work from this time in the morning, coming home, now eating, now see the kids, or now this, everything becomes a routine without any spirituality, then this will cause depression. This will cause despair. This will cause us to lose hope. Because we're forgetting about the key component of humans, which is the spirit. Look at some of the traditions that we have. فَكَمَا أَحْيَا بِهِ. Let's actually start with the Quran. Quran very beautifully mentions the message of the prophets of being life. The message of the prophets in Quran is life. Not life where your heart beats and your brain works right. Life where your spirit is awakened. Life that you're connected to God. That is life in Quran. You don't see, whenever you see life, you don't see necessarily life being just the heart pumping. This other component of man, which is the main component, is the spirit. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu istajibu lillahi wa lirrasul. So Quran talks about to the believers to answer the call of Allah and the Prophet, إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لَمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. When they call you upon what gives you life. Islam, Quran is here, the Imams, Imam Hussein, all of this is to give life. To separate us from materialism. Separate us from a life that we are confined only to hayat ad-dunya, this world, earth. To change the horizons, to see that life is actually much more greater than this physical or material. True life is connection to God. True life awaits us in the hereafter. We'll end with this tradition very beautifully from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam Sadiq in this tradition compares. It's a beautiful comparison. The comparison of water in this world. What does water do in this world? What is it known for? What is the key component when they're looking for life on other planets? What do they look for? Water. Water is the most important thing that creatures need to live. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, فَكَمَا أَحْيَا بِهِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ مِّن نَعِيمِ الدُّنْيَا. Just how everything, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ, he mentions, that everything is brought by life. And just how everything in this world is based on having water to live. If you pour water, I don't know if you've seen recently the amount of rainfall we had in California, the amount of greenery that started happening all around Southern California, that when you look at sometimes Google Maps or the images from before, you see like everything was dusty and lifeless. And now you look around the neighborhood, you see how green everything has become. It's because of rain, right? So rain does that. It causes greenery. It causes life. But Imam Sadiq alayhi salam uses this comparison, just how water brings life. But when it comes to the life of the heart, it needs something else. What is it? What do you think causes life of the heart? كَذَلِكَ بِرَحْمَتِهِ وَفَضْلِهِ. Just like this, just like that. With His mercy, with His grace, جَعَلَ حَيَاةَ الْقَلْبِ. God has placed the life of the heart بِالطَّاعَات, with obedience of God, with obedience and following the commands of the prophets and their descendants. So the last thing that we separate ourselves away from despair is having a healthy spiritual life, which is in reality nothing else but ta'at, obeying the prophets, obeying the successors, and obeying the Holy Quran, what the Quran says. Hopefully Allah can help us and separate us from these causes of despair: sin, failure, comparison, not reaching our goals, and a mechanical life. I'm just going to say in these last 2 minutes some musibat from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. In such a time period, we see that the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is going to Kufa, or is in Kufa. Is his journey from Kufa to Sham. We see here that Sayyidah Zainab now is the flag bearer of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's camp, just how Hazrat Abbas was, but many of the responsibilities fall upon Lady Zainab alayhi salam. She gives a remarkable speech in Kufa. It says in history that even the bells of the animals would not shake. Everyone became completely quiet when she spoke. She was causing a revolution in Kufa. But they know what can distract Lady Zainab. They bring forth something for her that will cause her to completely stop talking. They show her the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. There she says a few lines of poetry. She stops speaking and addresses her talk to Imam Hussein's head. Ya hilalan lima kamalan. O new moon, that when you became full. Istatamun kamalan. O new moon, when you became full. You see a new moon, how beautiful it is from the stages. It has a new moon, which is just a crescent. And now becomes full. It means it has reached perfection, it reached Kamal. That Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when you reach Kamal, you reach perfection. غَالَهُ خَسْفَهُ فَأَبْدَى غُرُوبًا. The eclipse snatched it and it began to set. The eclipse happened and this moon began to set. ما توهمت يا شقيق فؤادي كان هذا مقدرا مكتوبا. I didn't think, oh part of my heart, that this would be our written destiny. What destiny? That Lady Zainab is in the bottom of the spear and the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the shuhada are on top of the spears. Now she gives a warning about Fatima as-Saghir. Some say it's Lady Sukaina. Ya akhi Fatima as-Saghira, kallimha, speak to your daughter. I'm Zainab, I have patience. It's terribly hard for me, but I have patience. But your 3-4-year-old, she's much different. Kallimha faqad kada qalbuha an yaduba. Oh brother, little Fatima, speak to her. So surely her heart is close to melting. And in the dungeons of Sham, this Fatima Saghira, some say Sukaina, became an example of the oppression of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. with the oppression of Imam Hussein in Sham. What a beautiful word you use, Lady Zainab. Yaduba, though, melted. Little Ruqayya melted in Sham. She melted from grief of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The caravan of Imam Hussein came back, but little Ruqayya didn't. And she was buried in Sham. Ya Allah, we ask you, because of the honor of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the shuhada of Karbala, separate us from despair, inshallah. Make us of the truly hopeful. Make us have hope in your meeting, inshallah. Make us have hopefulness in your forgiveness. Make us be hopeful in your reward in heaven, inshallah. Ya Allah, it is Thursday night. Our family members and friends are waiting. Give them, inshallah, forgiveness and give them reward of this majlis, inshallah. Ya Allah, cure all the sick. Have rahmah on those that are poor. Grant everyone here their hawa'ij, whatever du'as they have, whatever they want. Give them, inshallah, grant them their needs. Make us of the companions of the Imam of the age and expedite his return with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.